Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses as we continue with Part 8, Religious Philosophy in Islam, from the Adepts in the Eastern Esoteric Tradition by Manly Palmer Hall, Part 4, The Mystics of Islam. Religious Philosophy in Islam. This is not a general study of Moslemism, but a section of an encyclopedic survey dealing with the descent of the Adept tradition among the various religions of the world. It cannot be said that all of the members of these faiths are in common agreement upon the esoteric aspects of their own beliefs. Many Christians reject Christian mysticism, although it has been taught and accepted by the most illustrious and venerated leaders of the faith. Many Orthodox Jews have been taught to regard the Kabbalah as dangerous and unlawful, yet it cannot be denied that speculations based upon its elaborate symbolism have dominated the interests of many rabbis and scholars. It would not be appropriate for a non-Muslim, therefore, to speak for the faith of these people or to dogmatize upon its doctrines. It is intended in this work to point out the parallels between certain aspects of Near Eastern metaphysics and the universal belief in the existence of sanctified persons possessing extraordinary insight into the mysteries of God. It is extremely difficult to draw a comprehensive picture of the more subtle aspects of Muslim religion and philosophy from the attitudes and opinions of non-Muslim authors. The general attitude of the European writers toward the faith of Islam has been for the most part extremely critical. No other living religion has been so openly and aggressively attacked. As this policy has long endured and is present on many levels of thought, it must be suspected that most available accounts are to some degree prejudiced, even though the writers themselves declare their impartiality or even sympathy. The impact of Islam on the Christian world was unfortunately timed. It occurred during the Dark Ages when Europe was under the heavy clouds of intolerance and illiteracy. The Christian world stood aghast at the audacity of Muhammad when he claimed that he had been commissioned by God to succeed the earlier teachers and further unfold the mysteries of the true faith. Here then was a vast and growing heresy which even the Crusades could not stamp out, and which for centuries threatened to overwhelm Europe. Devout medieval theologians prayed to heaven for deliverance from the plague, the Turk, and the comet. Today the faith of Islam is firmly established in most parts of the world. After analyzing the distribution of Muslims according to continents and nations, Zaki Ali concludes, "It may be safely assumed that there are about 400 million Muslims in the world. Under conditions as they now exist, there is every inducement for understanding and appreciation between the principal faiths of mankind, and it is on the level of mysticism, with its deep and generous understanding of values, that this union can most naturally and easily be accomplished." There is no doubt that Muhammad had learned of the lamentable procedures which in his day were disfiguring the rise of the Christian Church. There gradually integrated within his own consciousness the concept of a natural religion, a faith of extreme simplicity, in which there was slight possibility of elaborate controversies or feuds or schismatic quarrels. He did not believe that men should be divided by the transcendental elements of creeds. About that which cannot be seen or known with certainty, little satisfaction can be gained by argument. The Prophet was an Arab among Arabs. He knew their ways, and he recognized their needs. To him, it was far better that the conduct of the individual should be wisely and lovingly directed along familiar paths rather than that he be involved in disputes which might well cause him to live destructively and intemperately in the name of religion. The outcome of the Prophet's personal spiritual experience was a faith for the men of the desert. These were the men who kept the sheep and journeyed along the caravan routes. They should be honorable in their dealings, charitable in their inclinations, and they should be able to pray side by side, seeking the strength of heaven in time of sorrow or danger. What simpler theology could be devised than the basic substance of Islam? There is no God but God. Worship Him with a full heart. There is one law, keep it with contrition of spirit. There is one humanity, cooperate in all things for the common good. Muhammad sincerely believed that if these essentials were honestly cultivated, there would be no more theological despotism. Unfortunately, he was not able to so completely instill his teachings into the hearts of his own people that they could live the fullness of his message. This should not be regarded as his fault, however, but rather the common weakness of all flesh. The early relationships between the rising Muslim world and the followers of the Jewish and Christian faiths were not essentially difficult or unhappy. Muhammad designated the Jews and Christians as the people of the book, referring to the Bible. In his time, of course, the Quran had not been integrated. The Muslim was therefore dependent upon the words of a living teacher for his spiritual instruction. Gradually, a contrast was established, and the Muslims considered themselves the people of the family or the household with Muhammad as their common father. The Prophet forbade the persecution of any man for his faith so long as he lived it with sincerity of spirit, but he did regard it as virtuous and necessary that the Muslim should defend his own belief against oppression and tyranny. If he were attacked, he should use every possible means to achieve victory and to discomfit his adversary. If, however, his adversary surrendered or asked for peace, there should be no spirit of vengeance. Again, unfortunately, human nature was stronger than revelation. For most of the differences which seem inevitably to arise in the evolution of religions, Muhammad had a simple remedy. If God had pleased, he had surely made you one people, but he has thought fit to try you in that which he has given you. Therefore strive to excel each other in good works. Unto God shall ye all return, and then he will declare unto you that concerning which ye have disagreed. The conflict between early Muslim and Christian teachings may be said to have strengthened both faiths, but it also increased the barriers between them. In the world of Islam, however, there was little indication of a broad tendency toward religious persecution. The early Muslim was permitted to marry Christians and to share food with them, and these acts were regarded as certain evidence of basic tolerance. Both Christians and Jews were elevated to high office and were respected for their attainments in medicine, art, literature, law, and science. Under the caliphs, there was a brilliant restoration of learning, centering in Baghdad, Cairo, and other important Muslim cities. Other elements also began to emerge from the original focus of Islamic ideology. Conflict impelled the Muslim to strengthen his own doctrinal position, seek to define orthodoxy, and prevent, so far as was possible, the breaking away of schismatic sects. Obviously, the Quran, though a work of great spiritual insight and gracious literary style, could not meet all the requirements of the proud civilization that was rising in Asia Minor and North Africa. The scholar and the natural mystic also had requirements peculiar to their natures, and it was inevitable that Islam, like all other religions, should divide into an esoteric and exoteric part, the former drifting toward metaphysical speculation, and the latter retaining a conservative and orthodox allegiance to the letter of the revealed law. Because Islamism is a strict monotheistic faith, it emphasizes the need for saints or intermediaries between God and man. This is the same situation that led to the Buddhist veneration for arhats, or illumined teachers. Godfrey Higgins refers to a secret doctrine taught by Pythagoras, Jesus, and Mohammed. Always and everywhere, such a doctrine is associated with the concepts of a hierarchy of initiate teachers, advanced beyond the state of ordinary mortals. These are not divine beings in any sense of the word, or Islam would not and could not have accepted them. Rather, they are sanctified mortals who have attained a divine insight through faithful observance of the esoteric disciplines of their orders, and who have become vigilant guardians over the spiritual destinies of uninitiated mortals. In reply to the question as to whether the followers of Muhammad actually accepted an adept hierarchy, John P. Brown, an outstanding authority on Muslim secret societies, writes, "The dervish order put full faith in all the grades of spiritually superior men and angelic beings. The former composed what are ordinarily termed saints or friends of Allah. These in the Quran are designated as the friends of God who fear nothing. They are not subject to any affliction because they entertain the true faith. They have lived consistently with it and in exact obedience with God, from whom they receive a reward in this life and in the other. They are the title of the book of the law of God, the demonstration of all the truths and mysteries of faith. Their external appearance leads us to an observance of the laws of God, and their interior incites us to abandon and detach ourselves from all the pleasures of this world. They commenced their career before the beginning of time and labor only for eternity. During their lives, they never left the portals of the sacred palace of the divinity and finally enter therein. They discover and behold the spiritual secrets which God reveals to them and maintain therein a religious silence. According to certain mystical calculations, the true saints of the Muslim world are called the 3, the 5, the 7, and the 40. These are the unseen men who journey to all parts of the world according to the will of God and are given authority over the affairs of mankind, both Muslim and non-Muslim. Sometimes these saints are collectively referred to as the owners or masters of destiny. The chief among them is known as the center, and each morning the saints assemble at Mecca, presumably by some mystical projection of their higher natures, and report all they have learned and done to the center. On these occasions there is a religious rite of prayer and dedication, and they then return to their proper labors. The various mystical orders are the gates of the eternal city of wisdom, which, according to the sayings attributed to the prophet, is that vast community of the sages where the blessed dwell in their conditions of attainment. Nearly always, extraordinary achievements in arts and sciences bear witness to the rise of metaphysical speculation. This is especially true when the life of a people is bound intimately to its revealed religion, which is the dynamics behind all progress and achievement. The Library of Original Sources thus summarizes the early accomplishments of the Muslims. The results of Mohammedism have been greatly underestimated. In the century after Muhammad's death, it wrested Asia Minor, Africa, and Spain from Christianity, more than half of the civilized world, and established a civilization, the highest in the world during the Dark Ages. It brought the Arabian race to their highest development, raised the position of woman in the East, though it retained polygamy, was intensely monotheistic, and until the Turks gained control, for the most part encouraged progress. In his work, Islam in the World, Dr. Zaki Ali summarizes the scientific, ethical, and educational achievements of Islamic civilization, with special reference to the state of Spain under Muslim rule. He points out that in the 10th century, the population of the city of Cordova was computed at about 1 million. At this time, under the Moors, Cordova had 50 hospitals, 900 public baths, 800 schools, 600 mosques, and a library of 600,000 volumes in addition to 70 private libraries. The same author gives a description of the establishment of infirmaries for the blind and for lepers at Damascus. The great ruler Harun al-Rashid established a tradition of his own by attaching a college and hospital to every mosque. He opened an asylum for the insane, and it is universally admitted that those mentally ill were treated with much more humanity and far greater wisdom in Islamic hospitals than European hospitals of a much later date. In the 10th century, many hospitals appeared in the city of Baghdad, each under the direction of a renowned and skillful physician. Inspectors were appointed to make certain that there was no abuse or mismanagement in these institutions. In the 12th century, a Jewish traveler, Benjamin of Tudela, passing through Baghdad, found 60 hospitals, all adequately supported from the king's stores. Every patient asking for assistance was given the best of food and care until the cure was completed. Speaking of Harun al-Rashid, W. Wilson Cash writes, "Owing to the conquest of Jerusalem by the Arabs, Harun al-Rashid had in possession the keys of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre at Jerusalem. These he dispatched to Charlemagne, the representative of Christianity in the West, an act that was meant to seal a new friendship between East and West, Islam and Christianity. There can be no doubt that the early leaders of Islam sought to advance the securities of their own people and to bridge the religious interval between their faith and the religions of surrounding peoples. Everything depended upon the genius of inspired leadership. Under good men, virtue triumphed, but with the passing of time, power and luxury undermined the simple austerity of Muhammad's personal example. This changing of times, combined with the increasing resentment of Western peoples, brought about a tragedy of misunderstanding which was climaxed in one of the most disgraceful episodes in recorded history, the cycle of the Crusades. From the time of the conquests of Genghis Khan, 1162 to 1227, splendid empires flourished beyond the Euphrates. Over these incredible conglomerates ruled magnificent tyrants, some benevolent and others cruel and ignorant. Many were richly endowed with abilities and capacities, and nearly all of them were better educated and more thoughtful than their Western contemporaries. While the kings of Europe still made their marks on official documents or had their own edicts written for them and read back to them by hired scribes, the princes of Asia were endowing libraries, studying the stars, publishing editions of Plato and Euclid, and encouraging art and literature. Most of these Eastern Empire builders were devout Muslims, and while they did not allow their belief to interfere with their territorial ambitions, They had the wisdom and the wit to govern their peoples by means of surprisingly lofty ethical codes. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.